Recording. 281 वॉरग्रिन। पहले दो दो थियोरी है, सो फर्स्ट बी वाला पार्ट कर लेते हैं। Produce a budgeted results for the game stealth and briefly assess the game's expected performance, taking into account the whole life cycle of the game. Wargren designs and develops and sells many PC games. Games have a short life cycle lasting around 3 years only. Performance of the game is measured by reference to the profits made in each of the expected 3 years of popularity. Wargren accepts a net profit of 35% of turnover as reasonable. The rate of contribution, that is sales price less variable cost of 75%, is also considered acceptable. Wargren has large centralized development department which carries out all the design work before it passes the completed game to the sales and distribution department to market and distribute the product. Wargren has developed a brand new game called Stealth, and this has the following budgeted performance figures. Selling price will be constant 30 per game. Analysis of the cost show that at a volume of 10,000, a total cost of 1,30,000 is expected. However, at a volume of 14,000, a total of 1,50,000 is expected. If the volume exceeds 15,000, the fixed cost will increase by 50%. बाद में in addition, making cost for stealth will be 60,000 in year 1 and 40,000 in year 2. Design and development costs are all incurred before the game is launched and the cost and has cost stealth 3 lakh and has cost 3 lakh for stealth. These costs are written off to the statement of profit or loss as incurred. ठीक है, 281। तो अपने को लाइफ साइकिल कॉस्ट करना है। Budgeted results for game stealth and briefly assess the game's expected performance taking into account the whole life cycle of the product. So start particulars, year 1, year 2, year 3. So selling price दिया, sales volume दिया है, is 8,000 units, 16,000 units and 4,000 units. Analyze the analysis of the cost show that a volume of 10,000 units, a total cost of 1,30,000 is expected. However, volume of 14,000, a total of 1,50,000 is expected. But if the volume exceeds 15,000, the fixed cost increase by 50%. ठीक है, तो सबसे पहले तो हमें निकालना पड़ेगा variable cost, because with the help of high-low method, sales is 30 ना मैंने बोला है, ये तो कांस्टेंट रहेगा। वर्किंग नोट्स, variable cost per unit in order to find the cost per unit, variable cost per unit, we need to use the high low method wherein cost per unit is equal to cost at high level of activity minus cost at low level of activity upon level of activity minus low level of activity पहला वाला ठीक है सेकंड वाले में स्टार्ट लो लेवल तो सबसे पहले तो अपन क्या लेंगे 14,000 ले लेते हैं 10,000 और 14,000 14,000 मतलब हाई लेवल इज जो 14,000 दिस इज 10,000 so next is total cost at 10,000 is 1 lakh 30 total cost at 14,000 is 1 lakh 50 so cost at high level of activity is 1 lakh 50 either it is 1 lakh 30 variable cost per unit is 5 fixed cost taking 10,000 units अगर हम 10,000 यूनिट्स बनाएंगे तो फिर वेरिएबल कॉस्ट will be 10,000 into 5 so total cost is 1 lakh 30 in 10,000 right huh so therefore fixed cost would be 80,000 fixed cost would be 80,000 so let's set it down variable cost fixed cost this is 80,000 here 15,000 के लिए बढ़ जाती है स्टेप अप कुछ तो है फिक्स्ड कॉस्ट तो दैट इज 80,000 इनटू स्टेप अप फिक्स्ड कॉस्ट क्या है वॉल्यूम is equal to the fixed cost will increase by 50% so 1.5 variable cost is 5 per unit so 5 next is उसके बाद क्या आता है marketing cost जो नीचे the marketing cost for stealth will be 60,000 in year 1 and 40,000 in year 2 design and development costs are all incurred before the game is launched and cost 3 lakh for stealth. These costs are written off in statement of profit and loss as incurred. Okay. So marketing costs would be 60,000 and 40,000. So this is what do we call profit. Profit. Investment profit. Total cost during the life cycle. The life cycle cost during the life cycle is sum Total cost in the life cycle is this much. Production इसमें हमें वाला 3 lakh for stealth of development cost, but these have been written in the statement of profit and loss. I don't think ये आएगा. बराबर perfect. 3,20,000 is the total. asset के लिए है वो total. That's okay. But profit is 3,20,000. Our profit is 3,20,000 total. हाँ. Still product generated 3,20,000 of profit over 3 year life cycle measured traditional basis represent 40% of the turnover ahead of its target. 3 lakh development हाँ are ignored in the annual profit calculations. Yeah, initial design and development cost. On the face of it, the game will generate profits in each of its 3 years life. Games have a short life cycle as the game players are likely to become bored of the game and move on to something new. The pattern of sales follows a classic product life cycle with poor levels of sales towards the end of the life of the game. The stealth product has generated 3,20,000 of profit over its 3 year life measured on traditional basis. It represents 40% of the turnover ahead of its target. Indeed, अच्छा टारगेट भी दिया था क्या?
साहिल।
क्या हो गया? हाँ नेट प्रॉफिट.
सुन ना, मेरे को वेरिएबल कॉस्ट आया 5।
हम्म.
फिर वो मैंने अभी अभी मेरे को निकालना फिक्स कॉस्ट है। टोटल कॉस्ट मेरा 1,30,000 है, माइनस 10,000 यूनिट बना रहा हूँ, तो 80,000 है बराबर।
बराबर.
कि मैं 8,000 लूंगा एज ए यूनिट।
नहीं 80,000 तो यूनिट्स पे क्यों जा रहा है तू? 80,000 देखो फिक्स्ड कॉस्ट मिला ना. अब वो तेरा हर साल
हाँ,
आएगा.
और सेम ही रहेगा ना।
हाँ लेकिन तेरा ईयर 2 के लिए अच्छे से देख, उन्होंने कुछ तो बोला है वहां पे. स्टेप ऑफ फिक्स्ड कॉस्ट के बारे में वो देख. हेड ऑफिस टारगेट इंडीड पॉजिटिव. हाँ तो क्योंकि यहाँ पे 35% का बोला गया था यहाँ पे.
अच्छा, हाँ हाँ हाँ।
है ना. वो ध्यान से करना.
हाँ,
The contribution level is steady
वो
at around 83%, indicates reasonable control and reliability on the production process. This figure is better than the stated target. अच्छा contribution का भी 75%. अच्छा इन्होंने target assume किया क्योंकि इन्होंने बोला कि ये acceptable होगा. Consider it to be a target. We'll see. मैंने contribution नहीं निकाला है. ठीक है, no problem. Now we know. Considering traditional.
1,20,000।
क्या क्या? बोल बोल.
1,20,000 आया ना।
बराबर 1,20,000.
और थर्ड ईयर के लिए भी सेम रहेगा।
Yes. Considering the traditional performance management concepts, WARGRIN Limited is likely to be relatively happy with the game's performance. However, the initial design and development costs were incurred and were significant at 3 lakh and are ignored in the annual profit calculations. Taking these into consideration, the game only just broke even, meaning a small 20,000 profit. Whether this is enough is debatable. It represents only 2.4% of sales. For example, in order to properly assess the performance of the product, the whole life cycle needs to be considered. Nice. काफी अच्छे से बताया इन्होंने. कितने मार्क्स का था? 9 marks. Nice. Explain the principles behind life cycle costing and briefly state why Wargren in particular should consider these life cycle principles. बता भाई.
Principles behind lifestyle costing theory state why you need to consider the life cycle. Because in the initial stage, सबसे basic वाला वो life cycle का definition की initial in the initial stage the expenditure or the capital expenditure will be used, so it may not be generate sufficient profit to show in the books of account. But later on, as the cost will reduce, the profit will be stable and will be maximized. सबसे पहला तो ये
Okay.
वाला।
ऐसा लगता है कि during the initial stage, if the company introduces life cycle costing, it will be able to prepare better for the cost that they have to incur in the upcoming years. Better planning and budgeting can take place accordingly. Check.
As the product or the company has been 3 years, so we can see the net profit by 35%, net profit of 35% and a contribution of 75% because cost has been reduced to a minimum level.
Cost can be reduced to a minimal level. Cost control can take place. ठीक है. अब अभी उनका आंसर देख लेते हैं क्या है. अरे रुक जा. एक कुछ तो हो गया. Yeah.
ये क्या ऑन कर रहा है?
Cycle costing is a concept which traces all cost to a product over its complete life cycle, from design through to cessation. It recognizes that for many products, there are significant costs to be incurred in the early stages of its life cycle. This is probably very true for WARGRIN Limited. The design and development of software is a long and complicated process, and it is likely that the cost involved would be very significant. The probability of a product can then be assessed taking all costs into consideration. The profitability, I'm so sorry. The profitability of the product can be assessed by taking all costs into consideration. जैसा कि तूने बोला, it is also likely that adopting life cycle costing will improve decision making and cost control. The early development cost would have to be seen in context of the expected trading results, therefore preventing a serious overspend at this stage or underpricing at the launch point. काफी अच्छे points.
एक minute, the early cost development have seen the context of the expected trading result, therefore preventing a serious overspending at this stage or underpricing at launch price. Overspend or underpricing.
Serious overspending and
नेक्स्ट तो ये वाला अपन ने किया बराबर.
हम्म. ठीक है.
अभी क्या हुआ? थर्ड है ना? एक और है ना?
क्या क्या.
एक्सप्लेन द वाई इंक्रीज. एक और है ना? सी
हाँ,
वाला.
एक और मैं वही बोल रहा हूँ. थर्ड वाले पे जाते हैं. एक्सप्लेन व्हाई इंक्रीमेंटल बजटिंग is a common method of budgeting and outline many problems with such an approach. Incremental budgeting is uh, is a common method of budgeting because it is easy to implement. In incremental budgeting, the base year budget is taken into consideration and relevant changes or relevant changes or inflated amounts are being taken. स्किल नहीं लगता ऐसा मैं बोलना चाहता हूँ बट ऐसा जरूरी नहीं है ना स्किल नहीं लगता. हाँ अभी ये क्यों नहीं होना चाहिए तो मेन प्रॉब्लम्स में एक है कि if there are certain inefficiencies that have been seen in the previous year budget, then those inefficiencies will be carried forward in the next year's budget.
भी हो सकता है.
अब in a company a department might increase the costs purposely in the current year so that in the next year so that in the next year uh,
They
amount
will get enough funds.
enough funds whatever they will get enough funds to carry on their work.
अभी इसका कुछ नाम था ना? ये नहीं था.
इंक्रीमेंटल ही नाम है.
ये क्या नाम है?
इंक्रीमेंटल ही नाम है इंक्रीमेंटल.
अच्छा, इंक्रीमेंटल है.
और क्या हो सकता है इंक्रीमेंटल बजटिंग के प्रॉब्लम्स.
सबसे बेसिक तो वही है जो अपन ने तूने बोला कि
हाँ.
प्रीवियस ईयर का कैरी ऑन फॉरवर्ड वाले से बजटिंग है वो जो स्ट्रॉन्ग पॉइंट हो गए.
बेनिफिट्स में एक है मतलब जब स्टार्टिंग में लिखेंगे तो बेनिफिट्स में एक लिख सकते हैं कि इट इज चीपर टू प्रिपेयर. Thus, that's why organizations
हाँ.
prefer
हाँ,
this.
बिकॉज द मेजोरिटी ऑफ वर्क और कैलकुलेशन हैज बीन डन इन द इनिशियल लेवल
हाँ
और
राइट.
फॉर द ओरिजिनल बजट
हाँ.
which carries all the design work will passes the green. CM issues की body
और कुछ पॉइंट
में
यार,
बाकी
कुछ तो होगा
living on
जो अपन
things
मिस कर रहे हैं। क्लैरिटी
और
ऑफ
बहुत
कॉस्ट
सारे
कैन बी मिसिंग, बट ये हो गया एक्चुअली। चेक करना
क्वेश्चन
है।
भी कुछ मिल नहीं रहा। चलो चेक कर ही लेते हैं, बिकॉज वो फिर वो इररिलेवेंट पॉइंट हो जाएगा कि
हाँ,
प्रॉफिट एंड लॉस में ऑलरेडी कर दिया रिटर्न ऑफ, या फिर हैवी एक्सपेंडिचर हो सकता
पड़ेगा।
है। इंक्रीमेंटल बजटिंग is a process whereby this year's budget is set by reference to the last year actual result after an adjustment for inflation and other incremental factors. It is commonly used because it is quick to do and relatively simple process. The information is readily available, so very limited quantitative analysis is needed. It is appropriate in some circumstances. For example, in stable business, the amount of stationary spend in one year is unlikely to be significantly different in the next year. So, taking the actual spend in one year and adding a little for inflation should be a reasonable target for the spend in the next year. ये तो हो गई कॉमन यूज हो गए। एंड अभी there are some problems involved in the incremental budgeting. It builds on wasteful spending. If the actual figures for this year include overspend caused by some form of error, then the budgets for the next year would potentially include the overspending again. It encourages organizations to spend up to the maximum allowed in the knowledge that if they do not do this, then they will not have as much spent in the following year budget. ओके, एक तू बताया कि एरर अगर हमने गलती से ओवर बजट ज्यादा दे दिया तो लोग ओवर स्पेंड करेंगे। एंड सेकंड में जितने पैसे हैं सारे खत्म करने के लिए, क्योंकि अगले साल हमें उतने ही पैसे मिले,
हाँ,
बराबर ना।
बराबर।
तो ये दो सिग्निफिकेंट अलग बना। ओके, assessing the amount of incremental can be difficult। तो इतने से बड़ा हमारा खर्चा वो थोड़ा मुश्किल है निकालना, थोड़ा शैडो है।
असेसिंग द
इट इज
अमाउंट।
नॉट।
बराबर,
पर तो
बराबर।
वही है, इंक्रीमेंटल कैन बी डिफिकल्ट। ऊपर तो लिखा है सिंपल है, नीचे डिफिकल्ट है,
असेसिंग द
क्योंकि ये फाइंड
अमाउंट ऑफ
करना।
इंक्रीमेंट, असेसिंग द अमाउंट ऑफ इंक्रीमेंट, इंक्रीमेंट का अमाउंट डिटरमाइन करना मुश्किल हो सकता है।
हाँ,
इंक्रीमेंट
क्योंकि उसमें
प्रोसेस
इन्फ्लेशन भी ऐड हो
मैंने
गया हो।
इसलिए वो पढ़ा।
इट इज नॉट अप्रोप्रिएट इन अ रैपिड चेंजिंग बिजनेस। हाँ, क्योंकि तुझे हर बार रोलिंग बजट की तरह इसको भी वो करना पड़ेगा।
हाँ, राइट।
Can ignore the true activity-based drivers of cost leading to poor budget. Oh, wait a minute. Can ignore the activity-based driver of cost leading to poor budgeting.
एबीसी मेथड के बारे में अच्छी बात, अच्छा कुछ बोल रहे हैं खाली।
हाँ, बट समझा नहीं, मतलब इंक्रीमेंटल को बजट उससे क्यों लिंक कर रहे हो, क्या लिंक कर